Just sign for her. She won't notice." Those were the words my son whispered to the bank manager, leaning across the polished mahogany desk like we were sharing a secret. Like I wasn't sitting right there. Like I was invisible. Like I was already gone. The manager, Ms. Chun, her nameplate read, looked up from the documents. Her eyes found mine, not his. There was something in her gaze I couldn't quite read yet. Professional. Careful. Maybe even concerned. "Madam," she said, her voice steady and clear, cutting through my son's nervous laughter. "Do you want to proceed with this transfer?" I reached for the pen. My hand was steadier than I expected. And that's when everything I thought I knew about my son, my only boy, my Maurice, shattered into 1,000 pieces I'd spend the next year trying to pick up. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me pause and say this. I'm so grateful you found your way to my story. If you're listening right now, whether you're folding laundry, driving to work, or lying awake at 3 in the morning wondering if you're the only one who's ever felt betrayed by the people you loved most, please do me a favor. Like this video, subscribe to my channel, and tell me in the comments where you're hearing this story of revenge from. I need to know how far the truth can travel. I need to know I'm not alone. And maybe, just maybe, you need to know you're not alone either. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. It was a Tuesday morning in late September. The kind of morning where the air starts crisp, but you know by noon it'll be sweltering. I was sitting in the lobby of First National Bank, clutching my late husband's worn leather briefcase against my chest like it might fly away if I loosened my grip. The briefcase still smelled like him. Old Spice and ink and something else, something that was just William. He'd been gone 8 months, but sometimes, when I closed my eyes and breathed in deep, I could pretend he was still beside me, telling me everything would be fine. The fluorescent lights overhead hummed that particular frequency that makes your teeth ache if you listen too long. I watched a young couple across the lobby. Couldn't have been more than 25, filling out loan applications, heads bent together, whispering and giggling. They had that look. That "we're building our future" look. I remembered that look. I smelled the cheap coffee brewing in the corner, heard the rustle of papers, the soft ding of the elevator. Ordinary sounds. Safe sounds. I was here because Maurice, my son, my 36-year-old baby boy, had called me 3 days prior, his voice urgent, almost frantic. "Mom, we need to finalize some paperwork. The joint account Dad set up. It's urgent. Can you meet me at the bank on Tuesday?" Joint account? William and I had talked about our finances constantly. He was meticulous, careful. I didn't remember any joint account with Maurice. But grief does funny things to memory, doesn't it? Makes you doubt yourself. Makes you wonder what you've forgotten. So I came. Maurice arrived 20 minutes late. The glass doors swung open and there he was. Expensive suit, 2 shiny shoes, phone pressed to his ear. He barely looked at me as he approached, just brushed his lips across my cheek in a kiss, so quick it might have been an accident.
"Mom. Hey."
"Sorry, work's crazy." He pocketed his phone, but his leg bounced as we waited. Nervous energy, I thought.
"He's stressed."
My poor baby stressed. Miss Diane Chen appeared from a hallway, her smile warm and professional. "Mrs. Williams? Mr. Williams? Right this way, please." She led us to a private office, one of those small rooms with glass walls that make you feel exposed even though you're technically enclosed. Maurice sat beside me, but somehow, he felt far away. The papers came out. Maurice did all the talking. Too much talking. His words tumbled over each other, rapid fire, filling every silence before it could breathe. "So, Mom, this is just standard stuff, estate transfer protocols, making sure everything's streamlined. Dad would have wanted this handled properly, you know how he was about organization." I watched his hands as he slid documents across Miss Chen's desk. They were trembling. Just slightly. Just enough. Ms. Chun reviewed the documents with a thoroughness that felt almost aggressive. She read every line. Her expression shifted. It was subtle, the kind of thing you'd miss if you weren't looking, but I was looking. I'd spent 37 years reading faces, learning when my husband was hiding pain, when my son was lying about where he'd been. Something was wrong. She looked up. Not at Maurice.
"At me."
Mrs. Williams, she said, her voice calm but deliberate, each word carefully placed. Do you want to proceed with transferring the full estate, including your home, into your son's name? The air left the room. Morris's smile froze on his face like a mask that had cracked down the middle.
My home. My home.
The house William and I bought in 1988. The house where we raised Maurice. The house where William died, in our bed, holding my hand. I looked down at the signature line, and I saw my own name, already signed, in handwriting that wasn't quite mine. My finger traced the loops of the G in Gloria. The curve was wrong. Too loose. Too confident. My handwriting had always been tight, controlled. Years of teaching Sunday school had trained me to write neatly on chalkboards. This signature sprawled like someone had practiced it, but couldn't quite capture the hesitation in my natural hand. That's not right, I whispered. Maurice erupted into laughter. Too loud. Too fast. The kind of laugh that fills space so nothing else can. Mom's been forgetting things lately, Miss Chen. He leaned forward, his voice dropping into something that sounded like concern, but felt like performance. I was just helping her prep the forms at home. You know how it is. She gets confused with all this legal language, and I didn't want her stressed when we got here. The words hit me like a slap. Forgetting things. Getting confused. My jaw tightened. I wanted to scream. I haven't forgotten a single thing since your father died, Maurice. Not one bill. Not one insurance claim. Not one night I've lain awake managing what he left behind. But I didn't scream. I just stared at that signature. Miss Chen's gaze moved between us like she was watching a chess match.
She'd seen something.
I knew it. I could feel it in the careful way she set down her pen. Mr. Williams, she said, her voice still professional but cooler now, like water turning to ice. Would you mind waiting in the lobby for a moment? I'd like to speak with your mother privately. Morris's face did something strange. Panic flickered across it, then vanished behind another smile. That's really not necessary. We're on a tight schedule, and it's bank policy. Ms. Chen stood, already moving toward the door. For any significant estate transfer, we speak with all parties individually. I'm sure you understand.
He understood, all right.
He understood he was being dismissed. Maurice looked at me, his eyes pleading. Mom, this is ridiculous. Tell her we're fine. But I didn't say anything. I just kept staring at that signature that wasn't mine.
He left.
The door closed with a soft click that sounded like a cell locking. The silence that followed was enormous. It pressed against my eardrums, made my heartbeat sound like thunder. Ms. Chun returned to her seat. She folded her hands on the desk. No papers between us now, just space and truth. Mrs. Williams, she said gently, your hands are shaking. They were. I looked down at them. These hands that had held my husband through his last breath, that had cooked 10,000 meals, that had braided my granddaughter's hair before she stopped visiting. They were shaking like leaves in a storm. This document, Miss Chin continued, sliding it toward me, would transfer full ownership of your property, your bank accounts, and your late husband's pension fund into your son's name. All of it. Everything. Did you authorize this? The word everything echoed in my skull. Everything William worked for. Everything we built. Everything that kept me safe. And suddenly I was remembering things. Small things. Things I dismissed because you don't want to believe your own child would. Maurice asking for my ID 6 weeks ago. Just need to update your insurance, Ma. You know how these companies are. I'd handed it over. Trusted him. Finding my checkbook in his car last month. Oh, you left it at my place. Must have fallen out of your purse. Had I even been to his place last month? His girlfriend, Simone, was it? Wearing a diamond necklace at William's memorial service. A necklace that caught the light and made me wonder where a part-time hairstylist got that kind of money. His sudden interest in helping after years of distance. Years of missed Sundays. Years of, I'm too busy, Ma. And then, the week after the funeral, constant calls. Constant visits.
Constant concern.
I'd thought grief had brought him back to me. But grief hadn't brought him back at all. Ms. Chen waited. Patient. Professional. But there was something else in her expression. Something that looked like she'd seen this before. Mrs. Williams, she prompted softly. Did you authorize this transfer? I looked up at her. My voice came out steady. Cold. Colder than I'd ever heard myself sound.
No, ma'am.
I did not. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Ms. Chen nodded once, slowly, like she'd expected this answer, but hoped she wouldn't hear it. I see. She reached for her phone. Then we need to call security. And possibly the police.
Police.
The word hung in the air like smoke. My son. My Maurice. The boy I'd rocked through nightmares. The teenager I defended when teachers said he was troublesome. The man I believed was finally becoming who his father wanted him to be. He forged my signature. I said aloud, testing the words, seeing if they sounded real. They did. God help me, they did. Ms. Chen's expression softened with something that looked like sympathy. Yes, ma'am. It appears he did. This is financial elder abuse. It's a felony. Felony. Elder abuse. Words from crime shows. Words from news stories about other people's families. Not mine. Never mine. But the signature on the page wasn't mine either. How long? I started, then stopped. Tried again. How long has he been planning this? Ms. Chen glanced at her computer screen. The appointment was scheduled 2 weeks ago. Under your name, but the email address used. She turned the monitor toward me. Is this your email? Maurice W. Jr. 1987 at gmail.com. Not mine. His. He'd made the appointment. Used my name. Forged my signature. Probably practiced it for weeks. And I'd walked right into his trap because I loved him. Because I trusted him. Because he was my son, and sons don't destroy their mothers. Except mine did. Call them, I whispered. Call whoever you need to call. Ms. Chen picked up the phone. And through the glass wall, I could see Maurice in the lobby, pacing, checking his watch, completely unaware that his entire world was about to collapse.
Just like mine had.
I raised my hand before Ms. Chen could dial. Wait, please. My voice sounded strange, disconnected, like it belonged to someone else. I need time. Ms. Chen paused, receiver halfway to her ear. Mrs. Williams, I understand this is difficult, but 48 hours. I met her eyes. Give me 2 days. I need to know how deep this goes. She hesitated. I could see the conflict playing across her face. Policy versus compassion, procedure versus understanding. If he's done this once, I continued, my voice growing steadier. He's done it before. I need to know what else he's taken. What else he's planned. Ms. Chun set down the phone. She reached into her drawer and pulled out a business card. Take this. It's a financial crimes detective I know. When you're ready. She paused. But Mrs. Williams? Don't wait too long. Men like your son, they don't stop on their own. I took the card. Slipped it into my purse next to William's old reading glasses. When I walked back into the lobby, Maurice jumped up from his chair. His smile was all wrong. Too wide. Too desperate. Everything okay, Ma? Everything's fine. The lie tasted like copper. Just some clarifications. We'll reschedule for next week. The relief on his face made me nauseous. That night, I became someone I didn't recognize. The filing cabinet stood in the corner of William's study, the room I hadn't been able to clear out, hadn't been able to touch. Maurice had offered to help 3 times. Ma, it's just junk. Old papers. Let me handle it. Just junk.
Right.
The key was where William always kept it, taped under the bottom drawer of his desk. The cabinet opened with a click that seemed impossibly loud in the silent house. Inside, the smell hit me first. Musty paper. Old ink. William's cologne, faint but still there, clinging to documents he'd touched. I pulled out the first folder with shaking hands. Bank statements.
Dozens of them.
I spread them across the desk under the pale glow of the lamp, my reading glasses sliding down my nose as I bent closer. There it was. Page 3. A loan. $30,000. Dated 4 months ago. Collateral listed, 1247 Maple Drive. My house.
My home.
And at the bottom, a signature.
Mine.
Except it wasn't. I pulled out my phone, compared it to the signature on my driver's license. The forgery was good. Too good. He'd practiced. Studied my handwriting like it was a textbook he needed to pass. My hands weren't shaking anymore. Rage has a way of steadying things. I opened William's laptop. Password still the same, our anniversary, and found Maurice's email folder. William had given Maurice access years ago for emergencies. I scrolled through months of messages.
There.
An email chain with West Side Realty Group. Once the house is in my name, we can flip it fast. Market's hot. She can move into assisted living. There's a decent place on 4th Street. Monthly cost is manageable with the profit margin. Assisted living. He'd already picked out the facility. Already calculated the profit. I kept scrolling. Found text messages Maurice had accidentally synced to William's cloud account. Old ladies loaded and clueless. This is our ticket out. No more scraping by. No more begging. Just one signature, and we're set. The response from Simone. Baby, you're brilliant. When do we tell her? We don't. She won't even know until it's done. It was 2 a.m. The house was silent except for the hum of the laptop and my own breathing. Sharp, controlled, furious. I found more. So much more. A joint account I'd never opened. Withdrawals every week. 500 here. 1,000 there. Small enough to miss. Large enough to add up to nearly $15,000 over 6 months. A document I'd signed in July. Maurice had called it a medical directive in case I got sick. Just planning ahead, Ma. You know, after Dad. It wasn't a medical directive. It was a financial power of attorney. Full access. Full control. And then, buried in a folder marked Dad's contacts, I found something that stopped my heart. Voicemails. William's voicemails. I'd never deleted his number.
Couldn't bear to.
Sometimes I still called it just to hear his voice on the outgoing message. I scrolled through. Most were from me. From Vanessa. From his doctor. Then I saw it. Maurice. 2 weeks before William died. My finger hovered over the play button. Part of me didn't want to know.
Part of me knew I had to.
I pressed play. Maurice's voice filled the study. Impatient. Irritated. Dad. Just sign the trust revision. You're not thinking clearly. The medication's messing with your head. Mom will be fine, better than fine. I'll take care of everything. I promise. Just sign it, and we can move forward. A long pause. Then, Dad? You there? Look, we'll talk later. But seriously, think about it. This is what's best. The message ended. I checked William's call log. He never called Maurice back. I checked the trust documents. William never signed the revision.
He refused.
Because he knew. Somehow, even in his final weeks, even through the pain and the medication, my husband knew what our son was trying to do.
And he protected me.
One last time. I sat back in William's chair, my hand pressed against my mouth to keep the sound in. My son didn't just try to steal my house. He tried to steal my husband's dying wish, that I be protected, that I be safe, that I'd never be left alone and helpless. But Maurice didn't care about his father's wishes. He only cared about the inheritance, about the money, about what he could take. I stared at the screen, at the evidence, at the proof, and I started planning. I didn't cry. Not that night. Not in the days that followed. Crying was for grief. This wasn't grief anymore. This was war. At 6 the next morning, I called James Parker, William's best friend, his law school roommate, the man who'd stood beside him at our wedding 40 years ago. James had retired from his practice 3 years back, but his mind was still sharp as cut glass. Gloria? His voice was rough with sleep. Everything all right?
No, James.
It's not. My voice was steady.
Come.
I need you to come over. Bring coffee. And a notepad. He arrived within the hour. We sat at my kitchen table, the same table where Maurice had eaten breakfast 1,000 times as a boy. James spread out every document I'd found. His face transformed as he read, from concern to disbelief, to something that looked like rage. Gloria, this is. He stopped, jaw working. This is elder financial abuse. It's a felony. You could have him arrested today. I know. I sipped my coffee. It was still hot, bitter.
Good.
But I won't. James looked up sharply. What do you mean? I mean I have a better idea. I laid it out for him. Every step. Every move. Let Maurice think he'd won. Let him believe I was the confused old woman he'd painted me as. Gather every piece of evidence, bank statements, emails, recordings. Then confront him. Publicly. In front of Simone. In front of a notary. In front of everyone who needed to see what he'd become. And then only then file charges. James leaned back in his chair, studying me. You sure you want to humiliate him like that? I met his eyes. My voice came out cold. Colder than I knew I could sound. He tried to make me homeless, James. He planned to put me in a facility, like I was furniture he didn't want anymore. He can handle a little embarrassment. James was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. All right, Gloria. Let's ruin him properly. The next 72 hours were a blur of careful, calculated moves. I met with Ms. Chen again. We sat in that same glass-walled office, and this time, we weren't victims. We were conspirators. She walked me through exactly what would happen, what she'd need, how the confrontation would unfold. You'll have to be strong, she warned me. He'll try to manipulate you. He'll cry. He'll apologize. He won't mean it, I said simply. And I won't care. I hired a forensic accountant, a woman named Patricia Chen, who came highly recommended. She went through 6 months of statements in 2 days and found things even I had missed. Withdrawals from accounts I'd never opened. Credit cards in my name I'd never signed for. A second mortgage on my house. Mrs. Williams, Patricia said, her voice tight with professional outrage, he's stolen close to $90,000 from you over the past 18 months. $90,000. William's entire life insurance policy. I recorded everything. When Maurice called, and he did call, sweet as honey, I had my phone ready. Ma, I know the bank thing was weird, but let's just get it done, okay? Just sign a few more things, and we're set. I promise it'll make everything easier. Just sign. Just trust me.
Just give me everything.
Of course, baby, I said, my voice sugary and weak. Whatever you think is best. I changed the locks. Called a locksmith at 9 in the morning and had every door rekeyed by noon. Maurice still had his old key. He didn't need to know it was useless now. And then I did something that hurt more than anything else. I took William's ashes from the mantel. They'd sat there for 8 months in a simple brass urn, right where I could see them every morning. Where I could say good morning. Where I could pretend he was still close. I packed them carefully into a bag and drove to the bank. Ms. Chen met me at the safe deposit box vault. We placed the urn inside without a word. He tried to steal you too, I whispered to the urn before closing the box. But I won't let him. I promise. Ms. Chen squeezed my shoulder. We locked the box. Put William somewhere Maurice could never reach. That night, I sent the text. Let's finish the paperwork tomorrow. Bring your lawyer. I'm ready to sign. The response came in seconds. Literally seconds. Like he'd been waiting. Watching his phone. Desperate. Finally, Ma. You're making the right choice. I'll be there at 10. Love you.
Love you.
2 words that used to mean everything. 2 words that now meant nothing. I stared at my phone screen. The black glass reflected my face back at me, distorted, shadowed, unfamiliar. I used to see my son in that face. In the curve of my nose he'd inherited. In the stubborn set of my jaw that matched his. Now I just saw a stranger. A stranger who'd learned that love could be a weapon. That family could be a target. That the person you'd die for might be counting the days until you did. Tomorrow, Maurice would walk into that bank thinking he'd won. Tomorrow, I'd show him what it felt like to lose everything. I set down the phone and smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. The conference room was larger than the office where this had all started. Floor-to-ceiling windows. A long table that could seat 12. Everything designed to make you feel small or powerful, depending on which side you were on. I was already seated when Maurice arrived. 10 o'clock sharp. He was never on time for Sunday dinners, never on time for his father's doctor appointments. But today he was punctual. He wore his best suit, the charcoal one William had bought him for job interviews 5 years ago. Simone clung to his arm like an accessory, her dress tight and red, her smile bright and false. Behind them shuffled a nervous man in an ill-fitting blazer, clutching a notary stamp like a lifeline. Morris's smile was huge.
Confident.
The smile of a man who thought he'd already won. "Ma, you look great." He kissed my cheek. I didn't pull away.
Not yet.
"This is Simone. You remember Simone, right? And this is David, our notary. Everything's official. Our notary. Like we were a team." I smiled back. "Of course. Hello, Simone." She wiggled her fingers at me. "Hey, Mrs. Gloria. This is so exciting, right?" Maurice said we're finally getting everything sorted out. "Finally," I echoed. Maurice didn't notice Ms. Chen seated to my right. Didn't notice James to my left, his leather portfolio open, pen ready. Didn't notice the man in the casual button-down standing by the door, Deputy Marshal Thompson in plain clothes, arms crossed, watching. He only saw the documents on the table. Only saw his prize within reach. "All right, Ma, let's do this quick. I got a meeting at 2. He dropped into the chair across from me, already reaching for the papers. Ms. Chen slid the documents forward with deliberate slowness. Maurice snatched them up, speed-talking, his finger jabbing at signature lines like he was running out of time. "So this one's the deed transfer, just sign here, and this one's the account consolidation, sign here, and this final one is just confirming you understand the terms, so sign here, here, and initial here." Simone pulled out her phone, aimed it at me. "This is so special. Recording for memories. Mrs. Gloria, memories."
Right.
I picked up the pen. Black ink. Heavy in my hand. I could feel everyone's eyes on me. Maurice was practically vibrating with anticipation. Simone's phone camera lens stared at me like a red, targeting my chest. I held the pen over the first signature line.
And stopped.
"Maurice, baby," I said softly. "Before I sign, can you explain something to me?" His whole body went rigid. Just for a second. Then he forced a laugh. "Ma, we really should just. Why does this document say the house transfers to you and Simone?" I looked up at him. I've only met her twice. The room temperature dropped 10 degrees. Simone's smile flickered. Morris's laugh came out strangled. "It's just legal stuff, Ma. Standard procedure. We're getting married soon, so..." "Are you?" I kept my voice pleasant. "Curious. Getting married?" Maurice opened his mouth. Closed it. Looked at Simone. She looked at the floor. "Well, we're planning to. Eventually. But that's not, Ma. This isn't relevant." I reached into the folder James had placed beside me. Pulled out the first bank statement. Laid it on the table between us. "Then explain why you withdrew $30,000 from an account with my forged signature." The color drained from Morris's face. "Ma, that's not." I laid down another document. "Explain the emails about flipping my house and putting me in assisted living." "I never," his voice cracked. Another page. "Explain a text message where you called me clueless and said I was your ticket." Silence crashed into the room like a wave. Maurice stared at the documents spread before him. His mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. Simone backed away from him, her phone lowering, her face going pale under her makeup. The notary, David, stood up, his chair scraping loud against the floor. I don't think I should be here." "Sit down, David," James said quietly. "You're a witness now." David sat. Hard. Miss Chen's expression could have been carved from marble. She slid her own folder across the table. "Would you like to see the forensic accounting report, Mr. Williams? It details $87,000 in fraudulent withdrawals, unauthorized loans, and forged signatures spanning 18 months. Morris's hands were shaking. He tried to laugh again. It came out like a cough. This is a misunderstanding. Ma, you're confused. You sign things. You don't remember, but you did. I remember everything. My voice cut through his stammering like a blade. I remember you asking for my ID. I remember finding my checkbook in your car. I remember the voicemail you left your father 2 weeks before he died, pressuring him to sign documents he refused to sign because he knew what you were. Morris's face twisted. Ma, please. I remember the text where you called me loaded and clueless. I leaned forward. I remember you planning my entire future without asking me, deciding where I'd live, what I'd lose, what you'd gain. Simone was crying now, mascara streaking down her cheeks. Maurice, you said she agreed. You said she wanted this. Shut up. Maurice snapped at her. Then, realizing what he'd done, tried to smile at me. Ma, listen. We can work this out. This doesn't have to be. You're right. I set down the pen. It doesn't have to be anything. Because I'm not signing. The deputy pushed off from the wall. Maurice finally noticed him. His eyes went wide. Who's that? Who the hell is that? That's Deputy Marshal Thompson, James said calmly, flipping a page in his notes. He's here to witness. And possibly to arrest. The word, arrest, hung in the air like smoke before a fire.
Maurice looked at me.
Really looked at me. And for the first time, he saw that I wasn't confused. Wasn't weak. Wasn't the target he thought I was. Ma, you can't. His voice broke. You can't do this. I met his eyes. Watch me. Maurice tried to laugh. It came out like a bark, sharp, desperate, wrong. Ma, you're confused. This is some kind of misunderstanding. Someone's been feeding you lies. James spoke for the first time. His voice was calm, measured, the voice of a man who'd spent 40 years in courtrooms. Mrs. Gloria is not confused. She's been working with the district attorney's office for 72 hours. The room seemed to tilt. Morris's head snapped toward James, then back to me, then to the deputy. Deputy Thompson pulled his badge from his belt, let it hang visible against his chest. The sight of it, that gold shield, made everything real. Morris's face did something I'd never seen before. It twisted,
Collapsed.
reformed into something ugly. Panic and rage fighting for control. You called the cops on me? His voice climbed an octave. I'm your son. The words hit the air like a challenge. Like that fact, son should erase everything else. Should make forgery acceptable. Should make theft forgivable. I stood up slowly. My legs were steady. My hands weren't shaking. You stopped being my son the moment you forged my name. My voice was quiet, but I felt it cut through the room like broken glass. You stopped being my son when you tried to erase your father's wishes. You stopped being my son when you looked at me and saw money instead of your mother. Morris's mouth opened.
Closed.
No words came out. Simone was sobbing now, loud, ugly crying. She stumbled backward, hands up like she could push away her involvement. I didn't know, I swear to God, I didn't know it was like this. I turned to her. My voice came out almost gentle, almost kind. You wore a $4,000 bracelet to my husband's funeral, Simone. She froze. You wore it while I was burying the love of my life. While I was saying goodbye to 40 years of marriage. And you smiled at me and said it was vintage. I took a step closer. You knew exactly what this was. Her face crumpled. She grabbed her purse and ran for the door, heels clicking frantically against the tile. The door slammed behind her. Deputy Thompson moved forward, his hand resting on the cuffs at his belt. Maurice Williams, stand up please. Wait, no. Maurice shot to his feet, but he wasn't standing to comply. He was backing away, hands out. This is insane. You can't just, Ma. Tell them this is crazy. The deputy's voice was firm. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you. Shut up. Shut up. Morris's voice cracked. He looked at me, eyes wild. You're really doing this? After everything After everything you've what, Maurice? The question came out sharp.
Hard.
After everything you've done? After everything you've taken? He flinched like I'd struck him. My voice broke. Just once. Just for a second. I buried your father 8 months ago. Alone. Because you were in Atlantic City. The memory crashed over me, standing at William's grave, rain soaking through my black dress, holding an umbrella by myself while the pastor spoke words I couldn't hear over the sound of my own heart breaking. I'd called Maurice that morning. It had gone to voicemail. Later, I found out he'd been at a casino, playing blackjack, losing money he didn't have. Dad just died, Ma, he'd said when he finally called back 2 days later. I needed to clear my head. Clear his head. While I planned a funeral. While I signed papers at the morgue. While I picked out a casket alone. You weren't there. I continued, my voice steady again. Cold again. You weren't there when he asked for you. When he wanted to see you one last time. You were too busy. Too important. Morris's face was red now.
Splotchy.
I couldn't. It was too hard. It was hard for me too. The words came out louder than I'd intended. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. But I did it. Because I loved him. Because that's what you do for the people you love. The deputy moved closer. Sir, I need you to turn around. Ma, please. Morris's voice turned pleading.
Childlike.
Please don't do this. I'll pay it back. I'll fix everything. Just tell them to leave. I looked at him. Really looked at him. Tried to find my boy somewhere in this man's face. The child who'd held my hand crossing streets. The teenager who'd cried in my lap after his first heartbreak. He wasn't there. Maybe he'd never been there. Maybe I'd just wanted him to be. You're under arrest, I said quietly, for financial elder abuse, identity theft, and fraud. The deputy pulled Morris's arms behind his back. The handcuffs clicked, once, twice, cold and final. Ma, no. No, you can't. Maurice was shouting now, thrashing, trying to pull away. This is my mother. Someone stop this. This is illegal. It's very legal, James said calmly, closing his portfolio. I helped file the charges myself. The deputy began walking Maurice toward the door. Maurice twisted back, his face desperate, his eyes finding mine. I'm your son. I'm your only son. You can't do this to me. I watched him. Watched the deputy's hand on his arm. Watched my child, my grown, 36-year-old child, being led away like a criminal. Because that's what he was. Ms. Chen appeared at my elbow, holding out a tissue. Mrs. Williams, would you like to sit down? I shook my head. Didn't take the tissue. My eyes were dry. Morris's voice echoed down the hallway. Ma, please. And then the elevator doors closed. The silence that followed was enormous. James touched my shoulder. You all right, Gloria? I took a breath. Let it out slowly. Looked at the documents still spread across the table. Evidence of betrayal, proof of theft, the paper trail of a son who'd tried to erase his mother. I'm all right, I said. And the strangest thing was I meant it. I watched them walk my son out in handcuffs. I watched the elevator swallow him whole. I watched the light above the doors count down 3, 2, 1 lobby. And I felt lighter. Like I'd been carrying something heavy for months, years, maybe, and I'd finally set it down. The next few weeks moved like a fever dream, moments of sharp clarity broken by stretches of fog where time didn't seem real. Maurice was denied bail. James called to tell me, his voice professionally neutral but tinged with satisfaction. He had outstanding warrants. Unpaid debts. The judge called him a flight risk. Flight risk. My son. The boy who'd once been afraid to sleep without a nightlight. Patricia, the forensic accountant, delivered her final report on a Tuesday afternoon. She sat across from me in my living room, her laptop open, her face serious. Mrs. Williams, the total comes to $87,462. Stolen over approximately 2 years. 2 years. Not 18 months, like we'd originally thought. 2 full years of forged signatures, fraudulent accounts, stolen money. 2 years while I'd thought we were growing closer after his father's diagnosis. 2 years while I'd believed my son was finally becoming the man William wanted him to be. Thank you, Patricia. My voice sounded far away, even to myself. She closed her laptop. Hesitated. For what it's worth, Mrs. Williams, you did the right thing. I nodded. Didn't trust myself to speak. 3 days later, Simone cut a deal. Testified against Maurice in exchange for immunity. James told me she'd walked into the DA's office wearing sweatpants and no makeup, crying so hard she could barely speak. She gave them everything, James said. Text messages, voice recordings, plans they'd made together. She's terrified of prison. Good, I said. She should be. But the call that broke me came on a Thursday evening. My phone rang, Vanessa's name on the screen. Morris's younger sister. My daughter. I almost didn't answer. Almost let it go to voicemail. But she'd been texting for days, increasingly frantic messages I'd been ignoring.
Mom, please call me.
Mom, what's happening? Mom, I saw the news. I picked up. Hello, baby. She was already crying. Why didn't you tell me? No greeting. No preamble. Just that question, raw and accusing. Would you have believed me? I asked simply. Silence. Long and heavy. Then, in a voice so small it broke my heart. No, I wouldn't have.
She sobbed.
I listened. What else could I do? He's my brother, Vanessa whispered. How could he do this? How could he do this to you? I don't know, baby.
And I didn't.
That was the truth that kept me awake at night. I genuinely didn't know. The community reaction was complicated. Mrs. Henderson next door stopped bringing me casseroles. Started crossing the street when she saw me checking the mail. I'd heard through the grapevine she'd told someone at the grocery store that I was vindictive and unforgiving. He's her son, she'd said, loud enough for others to hear. Family is family. But my church group rallied. Sister Patricia organized a meal train. Deacon Williams came by to pray with me. Pastor Green dedicated a whole sermon to boundaries and protecting yourself from harm. Didn't say my name, but everyone knew. Morris's friends disappeared like smoke. The ones who used to show up at my house for Sunday dinners, who'd call me Mama Gloria and hug me goodbye.
Gone.
Except one. Terrence showed up at my door on a Saturday morning, holding something wrapped in cloth. His eyes were red. He wouldn't look at me. Mrs. Gloria, I need to give you this. He unwrapped it. William's Rolex. The one he'd been wearing when he died. The one I'd looked for everywhere after the funeral. Maurice gave it to me, Terrence said quietly. Said his dad wanted me to have it. But that wasn't true, was it? I took the watch. Held it against my chest.
No, baby.
That wasn't true. Terrence left without another word. The nights were the hardest. I'd sit in William's chair, the one Maurice had wanted to sell, said it was just taking up space, and stare at the photo albums spread across the coffee table. Maurice at 6, dressed as Spider-Man for Halloween, missing his 2 front teeth. Maurice at 12, standing beside his father at a baseball game, William's arm around his shoulders. Maurice at 18, high school graduation, cap tilted wrong, smile bright with possibility. Where did I lose him? The question haunted me, circled my brain like a vulture. Had I been too soft? Too hard? Had I missed some crucial moment when he needed me and I'd been looking away? James found me like that one evening, let himself in with the key I'd given him, sat down beside me without asking. You didn't lose him, Gloria. I looked up. My eyes were dry, but my face felt heavy. He lost himself, James continued. Some people do. They make choices. Bad choices. And those choices become who they are. But I'm his mother, I whispered. I should have known. Should have seen. You saw exactly what he wanted you to see. James picked up the graduation photo. This kid? He's not who Maurice became. And that's not your fault. I wanted to believe him. God, how I wanted to believe him. The letter came on a Tuesday. County jail return address. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside, 3 pages. Morris's handwriting, sloppy, rushed, angry. I started reading. Got 3 sentences in. And stopped. Mom, I'm suing you for emotional distress and defamation. What you did to me was cruel and vindictive. You destroyed my reputation and my future. My lawyer says I have a strong case. You'll be hearing from us soon. No apology. No acknowledgement. No remorse. Just a bill. Another debt I supposedly owed him. I stared at the letter. Read it again. Read it a third time. And then I laughed. It started as a chuckle, grew into a full laugh. The kind that shakes your whole body. The kind that brings tears, but not sad ones. Not anymore. My son thought he could break me twice. He thought arrest wasn't enough. Thought exposure wasn't enough. Thought he could reach out from a jail cell and still take from me. But he'd forgotten something crucial. He'd forgotten who raised him to be bold in the first place. I folded the letter carefully. Put it in the folder with all the others. Evidence. Always evidence. And I called James. He's suing me, I said when he picked up. James sighed. Of course he is.
Good, I said.
Let him try. The courtroom smelled like old wood and recycled air. I sat in the second row, hands folded in my lap, watching the room fill up. Half full, James had said. That felt generous. Reporters lined the back wall, cameras banned inside, but notebooks open, pens ready. Elder abuse cases were trending. I'd become a statistic, a headline, a cautionary tale. Maurice was led in wearing an orange jumpsuit that hung loose on his frame. He'd lost weight. His hair needed cutting. He looked small in a way I'd never seen before. Part of me, the mother part, the part that remembered rocking him through fevers, wanted to stand up, wanted to go to him. I stayed seated. His public defender was young, fresh out of law school, probably, eager to make a name for himself. He wore a suit that didn't quite fit and spoke too fast, words tumbling over each other. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is a case of family miscommunication blown tragically out of proportion. He gestured toward Maurice, who'd arranged his face into something meant to look remorseful. Maurice Williams was trying to help his elderly mother manage complex financial assets during a difficult time of grief. Was his approach perfect?
No.
But criminal? Absolutely not. Elderly. Complex. The words were carefully chosen, designed to paint me as incapable.
Confused.
Mrs. Gloria Williams, the defender continued, pacing, is understandably upset about the loss of her husband. Grief can cloud judgment, can make us see betrayal where there was only family trying to help family. I felt James tense beside me. His hand found mine, squeezed once. The defender called character witnesses. People who said Maurice was good-hearted and wouldn't hurt anyone. People who hadn't spoken to him in years. People who didn't know he'd gambled away money that wasn't his. People who'd never seen the text messages. Then the prosecutor stood. District Attorney Michelle Ross.
Tall. Sharp.
Eyes like a hawk. Your Honor, I'd like to call Gloria Williams to the stand. My legs felt strange as I walked forward. Too light. Like I might float away if I wasn't careful. I placed my hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth, sat down. The chair was hard. The microphone too close. I could see Maurice from here.
He wouldn't look at me.
Mrs. Williams, D.A. Ross began gently. Can you tell the jury when you first discovered your son was stealing from you? I took a breath. Let it out slowly. At the bank. First National. When I saw my signature on documents I'd never signed. And how did that make you feel? Morris's lawyer jumped up. Objection. Feelings aren't. I'll rephrase. D.A. Ross didn't miss a beat. Mrs. Williams, what did you do next? I recounted everything. Every detail. The forged signatures that weren't quite right. The power of attorney disguised as a medical directive. The emails planning to flip my house. The withdrawals. The loans. My voice stayed steady.
Calm.
Measured. Then we got to the voicemail. Your late husband received a message from the defendant 2 weeks before he passed.
Can you tell us about that?
My throat tightened. Maurice called him. Pressured him to sign a trust revision. Said William wasn't thinking clearly. That the medication was affecting him. And did your husband sign?
No, ma'am.
He refused. Why do you think that was? I looked at Maurice. Finally, he looked back. Because he knew, even dying, Even in pain, my husband knew what Maurice was planning. And he protected me. One last time. The courtroom was silent. Someone in the back row was crying softly. DA Ross nodded. I have one more piece of evidence, Your Honor. She pressed play on a recording. The quality was tinny, pulled from Morris's own phone records. Legally obtained. Court approved. Morris's voice filled the courtroom. Laughing.
Light.
Talking to someone we'd later learn it was Terrence. Man, I'm telling you, once I get the house, we're set. The old lady won't even know what hit her. She's so out of it since Dad died. Cleaning out the old lady before she kicks it, that's the move. That's the whole damn move. Laughter. His laughter. At my expense. At my grief. At my supposed incompetence. The courtroom gasped. Audibly. Collectively. Even the judge's expression shifted. Morris's face went white. His lawyer was furiously whispering to him. Maurice shook his head, over and over, mouthing no, no, no. But the recording kept playing, kept revealing, kept proving exactly who he'd become. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. When they came back, the forewoman stood. Read the verdict in a clear voice that didn't waver. On the count of financial elder abuse, guilty. On the count of identity theft, guilty. On the count of fraud, guilty.
Guilty. Guilty. Guilty.
Maurice dropped his head into his hands. His shoulders shook. I couldn't tell if he was crying or just collapsing. The judge sentenced him 2 days later. 5 years. Restitution of $87,000. Permanent restraining order. Mr. Williams, the judge said, her voice sharp as winter wind, you preyed on your own mother during her most vulnerable time. You forged her signature, stole her money, planned her displacement. The court finds your actions reprehensible. Maurice was let out. Handcuffs again. Orange jumpsuit again. He walked past me. Didn't look. Didn't speak. Just walked. Outside, the cameras were waiting. Reporters surged forward. Microphones thrust toward my face. Questions shouted over each other. One voice cut through. A woman from Channel 7. Mrs. Williams, do you regret turning in your own son? I stopped. Turned. Looked directly into her camera. Into the lens. Into whatever audience would watch this later. I regret that I had to. I said clearly. But I don't regret protecting myself. No mother should have to choose between her safety and her child. But when your child becomes your predator, you choose yourself. Silence. Then the flurry of follow-up questions. But James was already guiding me away. Toward his car. Toward home. The clip aired that night. By morning, it had gone viral. 50,000 views. 100,000. 500,000. People I'd never met sent messages. Shared their stories. Told me I'd given them courage. And somewhere in a cell, Maurice was watching too. Learning that exposure doesn't end at the courtroom door. 10 months later, my house looked different. Fresh paint, soft yellow instead of the beige William had chosen in 1992. New locks on every door, brass and solid. The study where William used to work, where Maurice had rifled through files looking for account numbers, was now a reading room. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. A comfortable chair by the window. Light pouring in. I'd taken the room back. Taken the whole house back. Every Tuesday evening, my living room filled with folding chairs. 8 women. Sometimes 9. All of us survivors. All of us learning to say that word without shame. Survivors. I'd started the support group at Pastor Green's suggestion. You have a story, Sister Gloria. A testimony. People need to hear it.
So I shared.
And others shared back. Stories that made mine look almost gentle. Children who'd emptied entire life savings. Grandchildren who'd forged wills. Caregivers who'd stolen identities. We sat in a circle. We drank coffee.
We cried.
We learned we weren't alone. That's where I met Catherine. She was 72, silver hair always perfectly styled, voice soft but steady. Her nephew had stolen $60,000 over 3 years. Used her credit cards. Opened accounts in her name. She discovered it when the bank called about overdraft fees. I reported him. she told the group on her first night.
But I still feel guilty.
He's family. Family doesn't steal, I'd said simply. Thieves steal, even if they share your blood. Catherine and I became friends. Real friends. The kind who call just to check in. Who show up with soup when you're sick. Who sit with you in silence when words feel too heavy. Vanessa started coming to Sunday dinners again. It took months. Months of short, awkward phone calls. Months of her processing what Maurice had done. What it meant. How she hadn't seen it. But slowly, carefully, we rebuilt something. Not what we had before. That was gone, broken by Morris's choices. But something new. Something honest. She came over every Sunday now. Brought her kids. My grandchildren. They played in the backyard while Vanessa and I cooked together, moving around the kitchen in comfortable rhythm. You did the right thing, Mama, she told me one afternoon unprompted. I need you to know that. You did the right thing. I squeezed her hand. Didn't trust my voice. The letter came on a Tuesday. County Correctional Facility return address. Different from the last one. Thinner envelope. Neater handwriting on the front. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Part of me wanted to throw it away. Burn it. Pretend it never came. But I opened it. Read. Mom. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I need you to know.
I'm sorry.
I was drowning. Debts I couldn't pay. Choices I couldn't take back. And instead of asking for help, I tried to pull you under. I thought if I could just get ahead, just get clear, everything would be fine. But nothing was fine. Nothing's been fine for a long time. I'm getting help here. Therapy. Real therapy. Not the kind I pretended to go to before. I'm learning things about myself I don't like. Things I need to change. I'm not asking you to wait for me. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not asking for anything. I just need you to know I finally see what I did. I finally see you.
I'm sorry, Mama.
Maurice. I read it twice. Then a third time. Looking for manipulation. Looking for the angle. Looking for the request buried beneath apology. But it wasn't there. This letter was different. Quieter. Smaller. Maybe real. Maybe not. Time would tell. I folded it carefully. Placed it in the drawer of William's old desk.
Closed it.
I didn't respond.
Not yet.
Maybe not ever. Some things didn't require immediate answers. Some things needed to sit. Needed to age like wine or rot like fruit, and only time would reveal which. That evening, I sat on my porch with a glass of sweet tea. The sun was setting, orange and pink and purple bleeding across the sky like watercolor. I opened the drawer of the small table beside my chair. Pulled out a passbook I'd found months ago, tucked in William's briefcase. A college fund. Set up for future grandchildren. Money he'd saved quietly, secretly. Planning for a future he wouldn't see. I smiled. Turned to a blank deposit slip William had tucked inside. Wrote a check. To myself. Then I pulled out my phone. Booked a flight. Destination. Accra, Ghana. 3 weeks. Solo traveler. One way. I'd figure out the return later. William had always wanted to take me. One day, Gloria, he'd say, pointing at travel shows on television. One day we'll walk where our ancestors walked. One day had never come. Not for him. But it could come for me.
I want to tell you something.
Something William used to say when things got hard. When family disappointed us. When people we trusted showed us who they really were. They say blood is thicker than water, Gloria. But that's not the full saying. The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. It means the family you choose, the people who protect you, honor you, see you, that's the family that matters. Not the ones who happen to be born into the same house. Not the ones who share your DNA. The ones who show up.
Who stay.
Who love you without condition or agenda. Catherine is my family now. My church group.
James.
Vanessa because she chose to come back. My grandchildren. Maurice was my son. Maybe one day, he'll be my son again. Maybe prison will change him. Maybe therapy will reach the parts of him I couldn't. Maybe he'll become someone I can trust again. But today? Today I'm my own daughter. My own protector. my own priority, and I'm finally free. If you're listening to this and you're experiencing something similar, if someone you love is stealing from you, manipulating you, making you doubt your own reality, please hear me. You are not alone. 1 in 10 older adults experience financial abuse, often by family members, often by the people we trust most. If you or someone you know needs help, call the National Elder Abuse Hotline USA. The number is 1-800-677-1116.
Write it down.
Save it. Share it. You deserve safety. You deserve protection. You deserve to grow old without fear. And if you have to choose between your safety and your family, choose yourself. Every single time. The sun dipped below the horizon. My tea was empty. My flight was booked. Tomorrow, I'd start packing. But tonight? Tonight I'd sit here in the home I'd protected, in the peace I'd fought for, in the freedom I'd earned. And I'd remember that survival isn't just about making it through. It's about making it through and deciding to live anyway. I closed my eyes, felt the evening breeze, heard the crickets starting their song, and I smiled. Because this right here, right now, this was enough. This was everything. Did you like my story? And what city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. Give us a like if you enjoyed this story. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. By the way, don't forget to subscribe. It encourages me to keep bringing more stories like this. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.